The initial concept was trying to capture the essence of light and energy in motion. My inspiration for a lot of things is nature. In this case, it's an interpretation of that radiating aspect of what I would imagine a light particle in a field would look like. What Duke Energy does is always a kind of underpinning. If you think about how much we rely on electricity to get to the point that we are plugged in, illuminated, every room, every space, I wanted to reference that connectivity. The driving factor is exploration and discovery processes. That dialogue is a consistent back and forth between traditional media and then hyper-tech robotics. When I'm working on paintings, I'll make a mark and then I'll have the robot respond to that mark. There's still some software that's making decisions, but it's not that one-to-one output. It's kind of like an exquisite corpse with technology. I want it to kind of think for itself. In essence, I'm embracing the idea of chance, anomaly, and error. There is some sort of curatorial aspect at the end of the process. With this project, we were using tools that are used in mechanical reproduction to smooth out the connections between two objects that come together. I went in there with an intention of what I thought the form was going to look like, and then learning what the software could do. And that technology played an integral part with the center core itself. The metal structure needed to be calculated very specifically, and learning how to manipulate it to get to a certain level of refinement was a process. The fabricator was able to actually do what we were doing in the software, filling and sculpting and marking it up in real time, then applying the rigid high-density fiber to it, making sure that that form was both aesthetically interesting and also give the idea of something that could actually function in nature. Alignment is very important to me in framing and force perspective. There was a lot of consideration of the volume that was made in that plaza. We needed to increase the scale to make it feel like it belonged in that public space. One of the first things that we worked on with the architects was elevating it.
The Duke Plaza was sort of the missing link in the arts district. There was a sensitivity to the relationship of all the buildings to one another and the relationship of the art within that context. The church has been there for a long time, so we had a responsibility in terms of being respectful of a piece of architecture like that. We wanted to give it its due importance. The buildings all sort of stepped back, really preserving that pedestrian realm in the core of the site.
The tower, neighboring structures, and the church next door, they take up a certain amount of physical volume, but then there's a lot of breathing room in between. I did think about the pedestrian and the viewer and the person that's actually going to, rotate in that universe. There's a negative space volume that compositionally stitches everything together.
The buildings are all laid out on a grid. They're talking directly to structure that you don't see below the plaza. And so the buildings, in a way, have to behave. The artwork doesn't. It's sort of unrestrained from the rigidity of that atmosphere, which enhances the environment.
And once we brought it from the ground up into the air, the nature of the shape becomes really delicate at the end. As you're standing in front of it, you can walk around and look up and be engulfed in it. There was also a backdrop that was brought into play that became a reflection of one of the armature forms to give it depth and continue that dialogue.
The lighting behind the two-dimensional sculpture that's on the wall draws the building into the art itself.
Thinking about how light interacts and how we interact, that facade can actually work as a big mechanism where all of those conceptual elements come together. Everything's made up of a billion atoms, but they never touch. There's always a little space in between.